and welcome back to Reality with Reality Hub. Now, today is a very special show. I have as a special guest on the show my co-host, Rob Ibsen. And in actual fact, I've been wanting to get Rob's perspective on a few things for a while, and he's done me a huge solid of putting together today's show in note form, which I'm going to let Rob drive, and we're going to talk about those topics. But Rob, you've always been a remarkably inspirational person from the point of view of getting your health and life into an organised structure that really works for you. And I think some of the things that you can share today will really help people move forward if they're struggling in some of the areas that you're going to talk about. Do you want to kick off with why you wanted to give this particular kind of list today and of topics that we're going to discuss?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks for the lovely intro, by the way.
You're welcome.
Special guest.
My co-host is the guest.
Can you believe, before we even kick off, that I think this is our 31st episode? Just realised that.
Isn't it funny? We began in my studio, and now here we are and recording from the Brown Street Cafe again,
Yeah.
thanks to Jeff and the crew, as always. Brought to you by Brown Street Cafe, not on Brown Street, but in Rosebank Road in Avondale. But it's a really cool location.
Yeah, I enjoy coming back here, and it's kind of our local. It's kind of our second home for recording, which is very helpful.
Yeah, and to anyone listening who has interest in podcasting themselves, I have to say our Rodecaster Pro and PodMic setup has been remarkably cool and versatile for what we do. So if that's something that you have a passion for as well, let us know. Send us the equipment you use. You can send us the equipment. Send us information about the
Why
equipment
not?
you use. We like to talk about these things. I think in our journey as podcasters, it's been fascinating to embrace the kinds of technology that have helped us, and cool, fun stuff.
Yeah, and the good thing is that you, Steve, are passionate and you want to learn more about the process, and you want to get skilled and proficient with the equipment that we use.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
thanks for all your technical ability and support and know-how.
Well, it's helped because I like to do voiceovers
Yeah.
too. You know, as paid jobs as part of my mix of income streams, and so it's been an easy sort of sidestep using essentially the same kind of gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because the podcast, the fun part is obviously sitting down and chatting with people,
Yeah.
and having amazing dialogue. But there's also the technical aspects, and then the post-production and the editing process, and getting that all right.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
and then, if you want to take it a step further, obviously the marketing side of having social media and websites and stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch of dynamics, and but once they're up and running, it's
cool.
It's cool. Yeah.
Today at the cafe, because it's very bright and sunny out. It's mid-afternoon. We have a very giggly South African lady in the background who's knocking back her third or fourth wine with her friend, and if you can hear them, they're staring at us, wondering what the hell we're doing. But it's great. I love it.
And just for our listeners at home, we did explain what we're doing, but I guess they're just interested in what we're doing.
Yeah.
Curious, which is fair
as you
enough.
would be when a couple of dudes rock up with a bunch of gear and microphones and put them on a cafe table.
This
But
is
look,
true. Yeah.
getting back to today's themes, which am I right, is routines, rituals, and envy.
Yeah, so that's sort of the topic. And the reason why routine can sound really boring, and it doesn't really sound exciting, but actually it's fundamental in terms of achievement and in terms of process of achieving something. So what strikes me is that everything is either a habit or a routine or something that you do consistently, whether you like it or not, whether it's your morning coffee, your morning checking your emails, your shower, except we have these routines set in place. So I wanted to dive into a look into how we actually create our day by day reality with the routines that we actually have, and then sort of taking a step back and going, okay, are these routines serving me or are they hurting me?
But for people who don't identify with having routines, it would be fair to say then you could also discuss default behaviours. Like the way you live in the absence of a routine, then will default more to
Do you mean
behaviours that are habitual. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a negative behaviour of always pointing out something negative to your partner in the morning, and you're unaware of the fact, you're not conscious of the fact that you're pernickety sort of words. You know what I mean? It's sort of like if you're bitching at your partner.
Yeah, well, you're
causes her or him to be upset with you, and then they have to manage that negativity. And then a blowout occurs, and you're living your life in a negative way because you haven't actually nailed down or become aware of the effect you have on another person.
Yeah.
Because you're just living day-to-day life without a routine, without a conscious awareness of your effect. You're not even at the level you're about to discuss, but you have default habitual habits that you haven't examined.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. You talk about conscious awareness. You need to be aware of those sort of subconscious reactions or ways that you respond to certain scenarios. And they can just be habitual. They can just be an automatic response that, hey, that's the way I've always been, and that's the way I was brought up. And you haven't actually stepped back and going, is this serving me? Is this resourceful behavior? Or is this detrimental and causing a negative sort of impact in my life? So, I mean, obviously I'm going to promote healthy habits, like anything. If it's having a positive effect on your life, then it's good to replicate that. So break it down. If you're eating really good food, drinking clean, fresh water, bottled water preferably, sleeping and resting well, I mean, you're getting the fundamentals right. So on purely from a physical sort of health perspective. But then there's also the mental habits, your mental hygiene.
Yeah.
And then you can tie in your spiritual habits and how your connection to spirituality and a deeper awareness of who you are. And then, of course, your emotions, and that can fluctuate, and how are you managing that? So, it really is. You know how if you have a personal trainer, or more so a nutritionist or dietitian, they give you a food diary or a plan, or they tell you to. Well,
they ask you to fill it out.
Fill it out, so
you can become conscious of what you're doing.
So get really clear, and you'll be surprised. From Monday through to Sunday, you're writing down exactly what you're eating, and then you can look back and go, oh wow, so I had that between 10 and 11, or it's just a food diary. And you can do the same for what your habits are and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So if you're working, for example, you know that X amount of time you're working, and then what are you doing with the rest of that time, and how's that serving you? So I know that routine can sound a little bit boring, but believe it or not, I think researchers have proven that structure actually frees you up to do other things. It actually, because you have your time scheduled, and scheduling allows you to actually maintain some sort of focus, and actually you're not so all over the place and wondering what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
So
that's an anathema to people who don't like structure, because they find the concept, when first introduced to them, as restrictive, as lacking freedom. If they're a freedom-loving person, like our good friend Janine from Yeah Know What. So she loves freedom, but that's not to say that you can't have, and I don't know if this is her case, she strikes me as a pretty organised person as well, but that's not to say you can't have a structure that allows you to enhance your sense of freedom in predetermined time frames, which give you also a sense of peace, that you've covered off your other jobs and tasks, so you just don't have endless work as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's creating those boundaries. And I think we've talked about this before. If you're a workaholic and you're just always taking your work home, or you're always working, and maybe you're spending, where's that scheduling and that break and that time to then focus on the balance, which is the relaxation time, the time for just being, the time for just space. So that word balance is really important as well. So it can't be all routine, and it can't be all freedom, I guess. But we're going to talk about the routines and also rituals, which are not necessarily the religious type, but more those personal things that speak to you and maybe are ritualistic in nature. But let's just run through some of the pros of having a routine or a habit. So I touched on, the whole rest, sleep cycles. This is going to influence your recovery, your ability to perform. So if you ever a structured sort of. Put it this way: I've found that if you go to bed at the same time and wake up around the same time, your body gets used to that sort of body clock.
Yeah.
And if it gets thrown out, then I feel a little bit tired. So I think in some ways your body, it kind of knows that this is a routine for you and it's good for you. I think we've all experienced when we're out of whack, jet lag and stuff. So
if I can add to that, one of the challenges I've had recently is nailing bedtime. So I look at the things I want to improve in my life. And I feel very, very lucky that there are a lot of things going well in my life, but I can nail it down to the personal issues around health and fitness that I'm most wanting to work on next.
Yeah.
And of all the things that a person could want to fix in their life, relationships, finances, job, career, all that sort of stuff, I think I'm lucky to say, if it comes down to just one thing, which is I'd like to lose more weight, that's not too bad. That's it's just one thing. Except that it's not just one thing, because it's my habits that have led me to where I am.
Yeah.
And I have to entirely work that around to change them up in order to effect the change of weight loss. And when you started talking about bedtimes, man, I've struggled with that. I've struggled to get to bed earlier because I know I need to, when my habit has been to be a late night kind of a person. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are. And we give ourselves and tell ourselves lies or truths, but we tell ourselves stories which are, I'm a late night person, I'm a creative person, my brain comes alive at night. Well, it doesn't have to. I could train myself, like you were starting to talk about, that at that time that you're used to in routine, start to feel sleepy.
Yeah. I
want that.
I understand that everyone is different. So if you are a late night person and you can get away with it and still function and you're healthy, then fine. Maybe you can get away with it. I know that I'm not.
You're
like
not a late night person.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that there's. What I'm saying is, the body needs rest. It needs good quality sleep. Anyway, well, I mean, we all know the benefits of that. It's a natural thing. So,
especially nowadays for mental health.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing about which I used to do, but haven't done for a long time. I used to have sort of afternoon naps when I was training really heavy and hard, and it just gave you an opportunity just to rest and recover. And I'm pretty sure they used to call it like power naps. And I'm pretty sure there's some good research on that say there's some great benefits for doing that. But I think we're kind of, with this sort of modern society and with technology, our whole, is it the circadian rhythm or, we're so out of whack. I mean, ideally, I reckon if you had a little cabin in the woods and you were connected to nature, I reckon you would reset that whole clock and you would wake up with the sun and you feel refreshed. And if you were eating really good food and exercising and living more simply, I reckon you would totally reset that and maybe even go to bed real early, but you'd wake up early. I don't know. I feel like you would.
There's a whole industry now built around affecting your circadian rhythm back to a more healthy place. I mean, you can get those blue blocking glasses, not like the good old days, the blue blockers.
The blue blockers.
But they're like a completely, what would appear to be a transparent lens glass, which blocks blue rays. And you can wear them so that when you're using a computer screen, you get less blue light into your eyes. Because people are using their computers at night.
Yeah.
Because they're watching TV at night. And so we've got solutions for problems where in fact we could possibly just stop the problem using
Ideally.
the computer or the TV at night.
Yeah.
Because if you take your log cabin in the woods scenario.
I know, it's a dream of mine, a fantasy, but not generally realistic for a lot of people.
But one has to assume that your log cabin in the woods it doesn't have any electric power. And at 5 p.m. on a winter's night, it's dark as midnight and freezing and chilly, and you've started to hibernate like a bear under a bearskin rug. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we have conveniences for a reason, but also we have an industry of people trying to allow you to have your carpeted floor, central heating home with bright lights, but then glasses to offset the effect that the lights are having on your circadian rhythm.
Sure.
For people who don't know, a circadian rhythm is your natural rhythm, which is primarily constructed by light waves on the eyes and skin, releasing a series of hormonal changes in the body, as well as electrical changes because we have an electrical system, a hormonal system, we have a lymphatic system, a blood circulatory system, all those different systems.
Yeah.
But primarily, I think hormonal and a few other systems are involved in sensing light and responding with hormones and so forth to make you sleepy, to adjust your rest and recovery cycles, to kick off digestive phases, to kick off even fat-burning phases, which you totally mess with if you don't get sleep at the right time, let alone forced sleep in an environment surrounded by light where none of those things quite kick off to their fullest extent. So you could be, quote-unquote, sleeping, but not deeply because of these issues we've mentioned.
Wow.
Like too much light on your skin whilst you sleep.
Yeah. I mean, that's mind-blowing. And to think that all these complex processes are happening behind the scenes without your knowledge. It's a purely unconscious, amazing phenomena, and yet you're so right. All these things are happening that are so important to the well-being of your physical self or your entirety, and then all because of getting some quality sleep. It's that easy. It is simply that easy.
I know this is more. I really want to get onto your insights into these things, but just to share this bit of information with this feeling I have, I believe that one study had highlighted that the most important thing to kick off with for weight loss, to get as your foundation goal, isn't the foundation goal of daily exercise. It's the foundation of sleep, so that you can have the energy the following week after a good week of nightly repetitive disciplined sleep to then start hitting the gym.
Yeah.
To then start having the focus on preparing and organising the food you eat, because that's a highly organisational affair, or otherwise it's an incredibly difficult challenge. Because if you don't organise, you're looking for what? Fast food outlets to see if they've got a salad? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing I want to say about the cabin in the woods concept is one of the reasons it works so well is you're usually close to the ground, and your body, it's going to be woo-woo for some people, can feel the sense of the temperature of Earth, can feel the radiation of the electrical system of Mother Earth around you through your wood cabin. You can hear the birds quieten off as they go to sleep. They become the alarm system at 3 or 4 in the morning to wake you up, to prepare you for light. You are just so... Your senses just reach out to all of it, and you become part of that. Whereas in a high-rise apartment or in the city, there's just this massive disconnection of concrete and distance between you and the ground. I find that when I go camping or that kind of thing, I sleep deeply because I'm closer to Earth.
Yeah. Agree 100%. I mean, just in my experience, just going to the beach and walking on the beach and being close to the ocean or... in the woods or just in nature, you feel different straight away, and you do have a better sense of well-being. And then when you come back into the city vibe, you feel better. But then, of course, you just start to sink back into the whole city environment and that. So,
in fact, we've never said this before, but if you look at our website, realityhub.love, .love, it's full of photos that we've never really explained to people before, have we? We've never actually said this is why these photos are here. But the photos that are there that surround our homepage and the About Us and the podcast page are all pictures of nature that we've personally photographed.
Yeah, all of those are personal photographs.
Some have gone from long walks you've had on East Coast beaches, right? East Coast, not West Coast.
Oh, West Coast, sorry.
West Coast, sorry.
West Coast.
And I've taken my favourite shots of snowy-covered mountains when I've gone snowboarding and that kind of thing. And those are our favourite places. I like beaches too, and I'm sure you enjoy the snowy environments. But
mountain environments, alpine,
that's
absolutely.
My favourite,
good point. I mean...
And they're there to look at, to
remind you.
To tune in with.
Yeah, to remind you that we have this beautiful natural environment. And if you are lucky, we're lucky in New Zealand that we're not far away from anything like that, nature. Even in our biggest city, we can go to 40 minutes away. We've got spectacular black sand amazing
Black
West
sand
Coast
beaches full of iron.
surf beaches, and full of iron, fresh air. We've got beautiful walks, hikes. You go down to the South Island, man, now you're talking. You've got everything you could possibly imagine.
It's such a different vibe in the South Island.
Yes, it is. It's
They're both good, but the South Island
different vibe.
has a greater quietness.
Yeah. It's more of an alpine and mountainous region as well.
Yeah.
Lot of mountainous. But those photos are to remind you that, in essence, what is your reality? It's connection to this planet, and it's connection to Mother Nature, and as much as a lot of people, I'm speaking for ourselves, most people live in big urban cities and major populations for all the reasons of work and for lifestyle, etc. That the balance. Remember that the balance is nature, and then I think a lot of the times we feel like I speak to people, they feel disconnected from that, but I feel it's such a simple way of retuning and reconnecting to just the naturalness that is already within you, and allowing that to sort of give you peace of mind, give you health, give you fresh air, all those wonderful things. And obviously there's other aspects, just one component. How's your routine looking? So that's my question to you guys out there. Have a look at your routine and what you're doing day by day. What are your habits? Are they serving you? Are they resourceful? Can you just introduce one thing where you go, okay, this week I'm going to focus on getting to bed at the right time, or this week I'm going to focus on drinking more water, or this week I'm going to focus on getting out into nature once every 2 weeks, or whatever, every week. When
is
you
this something that you do?
Yes, this is something that I'm very, very aware of.
But there's like 5 or 6 things there. Do you write them down, or what do you do to make sure you're onto it?
This is something, I've kind of structured a routine through habit over the course of my whole life.
Right.
So
what do you say to someone who hasn't had that length of time to get onto that list of 5 or 6 things?
Well, I reckon just first of all, just get 5 things, like a list of 5 things that you could do that would be improvement to your routine, that would help you.
Right. So start by writing them down.
Just by writing them down and going, okay, is this something that I can achieve? Is it manageable?
Here's a hack. Make it a screenshot.
Yeah.
Make it your wallpaper on your phone.
Sure.
Your lock screen, so that every time you open it, you're reminded of the top 5 list.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can just introduce maybe once a week. You don't have to do them all at once, but the key is making it a habit, something that's going to serve you. And it may just be, you can look at it through nutrition-wise, like your diet. You can say, well, I'm going to make sure that I'm at least eating one of my meals that is really good and healthy, or maybe it could be cutting out something that's not so good, and that you've been meaning to do that. And I think the really cool thing is that if you just sit quietly and really think about it and be honest with yourself, you know what it is. You don't need expert help. I trust that you know what you need to do. It's kind of one of those things that maybe you've misplaced, or you're too busy and you've been distracted, but you can actually go, you know what, I am always tired. Why am I always tired? I know I shouldn't be eating this. I know I shouldn't be doing this. I know I'm always reacting a certain way. How can I just be more aware of that, Yeah. So I know it's a lot. It's a lot to kind of manage this human beingness. It's a big task, man.
Yeah.
But yes, starting with your habit, because the habit is what you do on a daily basis. It's a routine.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I know, and I can speak for myself, I can get stuck in a routine. But if it's serving me, then it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So it's about identifying, is the routine, is this working for me, or is it not? And routines do give you structure. So you kind of know, or more so scheduling, so you know what you're doing at a certain time, and that can free you up for doing other things as well.
Well, let's say you've got your list of top 5 things that you want to be doing in your life, and one of those is drinking more water, and one of those is getting to bed early, and you've listed it out. You've put it on your screen, or you've got a notes list on your phone or something. and you're repeatedly reminded of your own list to follow. What happens when you get to the food one and you're a habitual buyer of Mars bars?
Yeah, I know.
Do you know what I mean? So then you've got to go further and you've actually got to learn about eating right.
Yeah,
and learn new options.
Yeah.
And I think, and we hope to have a top dietitian on the show in not too long from now. We're hoping to get hold of Karen Zinn, who's author of What the Fat, What the Fast, and What the Face.
I thought you were going to say something else there. What the...
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, WTF. But she's she's co-author of 2 of those, and I think another one, and they're working on the one for skin, which is coming up. And I had the pleasure in my work job to listen to a presentation from her where we met her, and I invited her onto the show. So
did you meet her?
Met her in person.
In person, oh
sat
great.
through a presentation of hers that was about an hour long, and it was just superb. Really, she's really clued in, and there's a few really great nutritionists and dietitians in New Zealand, and one of the things that she talked about is, well, so many things, Rob, but keeping it on track with what you've just said, and my complaint, if you will, of not knowing what to eat when you're changing the diet. You're trying to change, you're trying to eat better, but you're a habitual buyer of Mars bars, is to know what good foods are available and how you can prepare your lunch tomorrow. I mean, she said, for example, if you focus on making, and she'll probably say this on the podcast, if you focus on making one great meal a day, then just make a little extra, and that's tomorrow's great lunch.
Sure.
As a leftover. You know, and I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but of course that's right. But I hate cooking, so there's something that I have to come to terms with, you know. And of course, here's the thing. If I'm really unhappy about one aspect of my life, what do I hate more, being overweight or cooking? I think I'll just go with the cooking so I can fix the one I hate the most.
Yeah, I mean...
I'll start cooking.
It sounds logical.
Maybe.
It sounds logical. I mean, if something's causing you pain or suffering, and then you can do something to counter that or to improve that, which is probably... Yeah, if you don't like cooking, then how are you going to get past that? How can you make it... how can you reconcile that? You know, there's got to be some great tips in there, and I hope Karen gets a chance to listen to our episode as we discuss this, and she might have some comments on it. But I think frozen food options can often be a convenience that are okay, because she talked about snap frozen foods maintain a high level of nutrition. It's not as good as fresh food, but it's actually far better than we think. If something is quickly frozen, it's maintained its nutrition, and you can quickly steam it, heat it, maybe microwave it. Yeah.
But if you've got pre-prepared meals, I think in a way, for someone who really dislikes eating or cooking, you're ready to go. That's a solution.
Yeah, I can't wait to chat with Karen, because I have a health and fitness background. My passion is health and fitness. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I've got a good sense of good nutritional habits, and I always think to myself, and this is the way I do it, is I train really hard, and I want to maintain a certain level of fitness, health, and I don't want all of that undone by then fueling the body with the wrong food. So that's the way I always address it. I go, hang on a minute, I've just spent, whatever it is, 45 minutes, an hour training hard, doing what I'm doing. It just makes total sense that I got to be eating right. And you ask any top athlete, and even there's this whole idea as well, and particularly in bodybuilding circles, which is the extreme form of weight training and hypertrophy, but they get really lean for a comp, and it's 90% nutrition. It's the diet manipulating, and of course there's genetics and all that sort of stuff, but there's this whole thing that you got to do a lot of cardio. Well, you can actually manipulate it with the diet that you're consuming, and then the more muscle mass you have, the more your body's ability to burn calories and fuel and etc. But I'm looking forward to Karen, because she'll have some amazing hacks and tips to get started on that journey if you have no idea what you're eating and anything about what good food is. Because I think we've lost the art of this. Everything is just convenient. Where was I? I was in the warehouse, and I was just buying. I bought a desk lamp, a USB they can use for online stuff as well. But it's so weird. In order to get into the checkout, there's like this square I don't know what you call it, but you're surrounded and it's all just candy bars. Like you're trapped in it.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in the queue.
Through this temptation.
Yeah, it's right there. And they know they're smart. I know they do the supermarket still, but I just thought, I'm just surrounded. And how many times would a family go through there with kids and they just go, oh, let's just grab this, let's just grab this.
So some supermarkets have stopped doing that with 1 or 2 checkouts, and so that they're like a family-friendly
temptation,
checkout.
And you just finished work, you're shopping, you're hungry, you can't wait till you get home to cook the food. Oh, let's just grab that Mars bar or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's one of the problems. Like, how do you, from a psychological point of view, how do you resist that? How do you have that discipline to say no and go, hang on a minute, no, I'm going to go home and I eat some good quality food and not ruin my appetite, not ruin, by get it, because it's so easy. That's the other thing. And I think, are we in a culture where we want things easy and because we maybe our lifestyle is dictated that way because we're so busy and we're making a living and that sort of thing. So we've got all these other stresses. So to counter that, it's like, well, and then the other thing psychologically is, oh, I deserve that because I've worked so hard. I'm going to have that pleasure because it sort of equates pleasure. Whereas I think with anything
I travel a lot for work and sometimes I can't do the things that are involved with food preparation because I'm at a hotel or whatever. So I've then got to start making wise choices of a menu in a place I may have never been to before. And I don't know if the meal's going to be... Well, sometimes you order a salad and it's just tiny and you go, shit, I needed to have gotten 3 of those. And it would have been good if you had 3. But you look at it for $25 and you go, that'll be great. And it's not. Or whatever. So you can make choices that look more like something you'd expect to see, like fish and chips. Well, if it's fish and chips, it's 2 pieces of fish and some chips and some salad. And you maybe make a bad choice because you know what to expect out of that.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes for travellers, and I think a lot of people, quote-unquote travelling, are incredibly sedentary because they spend that time in a car or a plane. It's just sedentary. Yeah.
I mean, that whole travelling thing will throw any kind of routine out. I mean, I know there are some hacks when you can definitely, and particularly when we went through our lockdown phase, there were a lot of people on social media showing what you can do in a small amount of space or in a hotel room, what sort of exercises you can do.
That's true.
But, it comes down to your disposition and your desire, and once again, it requires work. It requires work to exercise. It requires more effort, I guess, to cook your own food than to just get it delivered or to buy it.
That's not to say that having delivered food, if you can trust it, is a bad thing. I mean, some people's time is more valuable spent working than it is spent cooking.
Yes.
If you have a high paid job and you figure out that your income values at around $50 an hour in a 40-hour week, why would you spend a couple of hours cooking something?
Right.
When you could spend $25 on a reasonable meal on a food plan on a nightly basis, where you get sent a box of food with pre-made items in it once a week or several times a week to keep it fresh. So I think there are different approaches, of course. I have to say, for the travellers, if anyone's listening and you're in a position to purchase a Coral Club membership, for example, or an airline lounge membership where they make good fresh food, you might balk at the cost, especially if you're a contractor who funds your own travel, that an extra $600 a year for that membership isn't worth it. But think about it, if every time you travel you've got good fresh food there and easy to sort of obtain small quantities at a time to keep you fueled, well, that's better than going down to the convenience store at the airport and buying a shitty meal.
Yeah.
You can select from salads. You'd say, well, for $600, that's not a bad yearly plan for most of your meals whilst you're travelling.
Yeah. And I think you got to bear in mind is that the bottom line is, like, how do you value your health? And I always put health as the number one priority. And believe it or not, if you look after yourself, if you have good routines, if you sleep well, if you rest well, you exercise, you eat well, then you actually have more energy. And I know Marwan would agree with us, our resident PT, who's been on the show a couple of times.
He smashed me yesterday.
Oh, did he?
Gym. Oh, smashed me. And I was late. I apologise for disrespecting his time, and but I got there, and because we had a late night for a work do the night before.
Right.
And a great evening at an Italian place, and we ate more than we could fit into our bodies. It was, and then the next morning, seeing Marwan, and I was late to turn up, but he was cool, and all we did was just 2 exercises repeatedly.
Oh, far out.
Yeah, we just did chest and core in different ways.
Different ways, yeah.
And then he left me because he had to go to his thing, and I really only got 25 minutes with him.
Yeah.
But it was maybe the best 25 minutes of my day.
Yeah. But I think I remember him saying, I don't know if it was an Instagram post or something, but he said 100% all his clients, whether they're corporate people or from every walk of life, no matter how busy they are, he realized that if your body, your machine is working at optimal, then you actually have more energy and you are more productive.
Yeah.
So scheduling in that time to look after yourself will have maximum benefits. So, So I'm sure he would agree with that. And
totally.
And I agree with it.
Marwan's not someone to skimp out on a good night out either himself. And I think he's proof of that. He's got the stamina and the energy to go, and hit the dance floor tiles pretty well. If you've got the energy to stay on top of your exercise diet and sleep, generally speaking. I mean, even he doesn't like doing core. He said, this is the one I hate the most, but here we go, you got to do it.
I think we all do. If we're truthful, there are body parts or certain exercises that we dislike, but sometimes you just got to get over that and do it because it's going to be worth it. So, rituals.
Okay.
Yeah. What's your definition of a ritual? When I say ritual...
Well, I mean, don't be silly. Everyone knows that's when you cast 2 cups of sugar over your left shoulder and 1 of salt over your right. You spin 3 times and thank the gods of the east wind. Yes. Then you invoke the angels and you light candles to the dead. That's the sort of ritual you're talking about, right?
Precisely.
Well, I'm onto that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, it's funny because I interchange between I have a Saturday morning ritual because it just sounds better. Let me explain. So my Saturday morning ritual is my leg workout. It's a non-negotiable because it just is. Because legs is sort of the biggest muscle group. It's hard and I just seem to do it on Saturday. Anyway, but ritual sort of has this...
Well, how do you dance Saturday night? You must be totally bloked.
My dancing days are over. I wouldn't say over, but I've kind of done that.
Okay,
But to tell you the truth, hitting the dance floor and it's a good cardio session.
Yeah.
You sweat, man. Your heart rate's up. It's great.
Sure.
And even better if you don't drink any alcohol because you're just like full-on dance cardio.
Yeah. I hear you.
But routine sort of sounds boring, but ritual sort of has a deeper sense to it. And I know that...
it does.
It's a Latin word which is derived from ritualis, which basically means rite. You think of a rite, which was a kind of way of doing something or correct performance. So a ritual sort of invokes something more spiritual. And that's why I like it.
So it means right. It comes from, it has a
ritualis.
Ritualis, but also relates to the word right.
Right.
Like a rite of passage, which in itself is a ritual.
Between right and wrong.
Right,
so there's a ritual way of doing something, which is the correct way. Obviously something like prayer is a form of ritual. You might have like a ceremony is a sort of a ritual.
Yeah.
Ancient cultures have ceremonies and rituals, which may be praying to the gods or rituals which would give them good luck or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that spirit, but there's definitely that religious component. But I think it goes more to the sort of, in my interpretation, a connection to spirituality and a deeper essence of yourself. So that's why I like it. Yeah, of yourself.
See, I really like the way you add that at the end because in previous times gone by, the paradigm was to deeper spirituality of the God outside of you. A connection to spiritual
Yeah, let's perform this ritual.
beliefs or entities
Yeah.
to the things that ruled your life. But no, you're talking about to a deeper connection of
A
yourself.
personal ritual. Yeah, the rituals that, it might be, I don't know, when you're facing a challenge or you have something happening in your life where you need answers, you might throw the tarot cards out and do that sort of ritual.
I know people who do that.
Yeah, and then that speaks to them. Or they might go out into nature and connect with the ocean and do some sort of ritual that is personal to them. So I'm speaking more of what the personal rituals that you employ as a part of connecting to your spiritual nature and getting you to a deeper dimension of your consciousness. Not necessarily connecting to a god or an entity or a religion.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And can I just add that it occurs to me the beauty of that is that it is a pattern interrupter in a good way.
Yeah.
Because let's say you have a problem and I'm just going to use the most silly example, but say you lose your keys, that's a problem in that moment. And if you have a instant reactive response to that kind of problem, I've lost this, I can't find my such and such, where is this gone? That instant reaction, and I can speak from personal experience, might be anger or deep frustration or raising my effing hell, I've lost this and that, right? And I think when you connect to yourself regularly and deeply to the inner calm, you disrupt those standard default emotional reactions you have in life, which might be to your partner saying something, which might be to an employee interaction with a fellow colleague. And if you can disrupt those reactions that you normally have, you stop becoming the person whose buttons can be pushed, and you become the person who can more quickly access a more original response, different from a response you've ever given before, because you more frequently connect to that deeper aspect of yourself that interrupts habitual responses.
Yeah. And that comes down to having that awareness of that, and then also having the practice that you've had that ritual in order to know that you can go to that place.
So how funny is it that you're talking about an ancient concept of ritual?
Totally. Yeah.
Which in itself seems rigid and timed and regular, by the clock, locked into an appointment. At first it might seem that way, and yet the end result can be, in this scenario, free you up to be more lucid, free thinking, respond more freely and more creatively. How funny that such an ancient appointment-based concept of repetition can do the opposite for freedom and creativity and lateral thinking.
Yeah, wow. I actually didn't think of it in that terms. So it's interesting where your brain goes.
It's funny.
But
can I tell you something just quietly so that our guests can hear, but our neighbours at the next table can't?
Oh, yeah, because you've got the eye line.
I've got the eye line, but the South African lady across the table from us, she has frequently giggled out loudly, really loud, and shrieked, and at the same time yelled, "Oh, TMI! Oh, that's just TMI!"
Right.
Which of course is too much information. But what's fascinating about that is I wish if I could say to that person, but of course I don't know them, and I never would do this. But I would when you see people in a repetitive state, constantly rephrasing the same words. You want to say, hey, I challenge you to go a day without using that phrase. I challenge you to go a week without saying TMI, which is your way of saying, oh, too much information. You see, it's on a deeper level, psychological level. What does that mean? I'm not willing to take information into my life. I keep to a tiny scope of parameter so that things beyond my accepted paradigm of what is and isn't okay is not messed with or interfered with. If I see someone behave in a certain way or tell me something personal, am I going to screech TMI because I don't really want to connect with their realness?
Right, yeah.
You know, it's a fascinating
It is a fascinating
thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've never sort of used that term, but I'm definitely aware of it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it's kind of like maybe you aren't open to sort of digging a little deeper and exposing
if someone
what's
connects
behind
with
that.
you as a real human being, and they connect in such a real, genuine way from heart to heart, or they wanted to hug you, do you push them away and go, "Oh, it's too much. I can't take the realness of it." TMI.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it
too
could be,
much.
an automatic response, and it's curious as to how or where you pick that up.
Yeah. Well,
That's one thing.
Yeah.
And then having the awareness that you do that, and then going deeper and going, well, why am I doing that? So it's always getting curious as to how I react that way.
Yeah.
And what's that doing? Is it?
I think in this case, it's as I hallucinate it to be for this person I don't know. I interpret it as boundaries.
Boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not willing to go down that path.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then boundaries are set up for what I understand is you kind of as a protection mechanism in some ways.
Yeah.
So interesting. We're doing a little counselling session on the fly.
Well, no, it's counselling for who? This person's not even involved.
I know,
but what a fascinating sort of example, which I can relate to. And so let me take it away from the person across the way smashing back their fifth Chardonnay to
You're not keeping track, are you?
well, but it's just that perhaps what alcohol is so good at is enlarging and exaggerating a situation for us to see it.
Yes.
Without which it would seem perhaps unreasonable to you wouldn't see that detail blown out. But in my own life, I've seen people who have boundaries around what they're willing to talk about and connect with.
Yeah.
And outside of that, it's TMI territory. It's too much for me to cope with, and therefore I protect my reality with this boundary to hold my fragile psychological state in the place that it's at, because I don't want it to be pushed to a new level, because that's too much to cope with.
Yeah, too much to cope with. And
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I mean, it's up to you what you accept and what boundaries you set up and for what reason.
Yeah.
And I guess, it can be. The thing is with boundaries is it limits you in so many ways. It can protect you, but there's this whole thing where it's a two-way street. It's a bit like, falling in love. It's a two-way thing. Someone's got to be open and vulnerable.
Yeah.
So you let in, so you can feel, and you can feel all the good things, but you also let in all the bad things as well. But you can.
That's
but
such
if
a
you're
good
closed,
example.
I mean, I've experienced this, and it's so true. So, and a lot of people that are hurt will just protect themselves, go into self-protective mode. But the problem is they're doing it for the right reasons, for good reasons, because they don't want to get hurt again.
To protect themselves, yeah.
But the other thing is you're not allowing anything good in as well. So it's that whole thing of, and we all know people like that. Often people that are angry and defensive are just trying to protect themselves. They're trying to not feel that pain and be hurt again.
I remember someone describing to me what certain antidepressants' effect were on them. And it was commonly understood what they were saying to me was something that they had from personal experience, but also being relayed by a doctor to them, which they said, this is the truth as I experience it also. So then they shared it with me, and they said the type of medication that they were taking both stopped them from experiencing the depths and levels of despair that they once had, but also prevented them from going to the highs of joy that they also once had. So it suspended them in this in-between place without the ability to have the contrast. And sure, that has, in my unqualified opinion, a therapeutic benefit of stabilizing a person.
Sure.
But then at what point do you want to return to the full human spectrum of experience again? Hopefully when you're ready to, when it's not all too much, TMI again.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. That it sort of puts you in that, I don't know, liminal space or neutral space.
Liminal, that's like an in-between space.
In between space. So
and that's not to discount that there will be people who maybe have a natural disposition towards bipolar nature.
Sure.
And that you can't just simplify that issue and thus say, well, when you're ready to cope with things again.
Yeah.
That's not the scenario. These are deeply felt feelings which may have no logical basis in human interaction. They just exist for them, and we haven't figured that out yet. Yeah.
But you're right. There's this full spectrum of emotions, full range of color, and if your whole world is just greys and blacks, then that's not a good place to be. You need to have that color, that high and that joy aspect as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, my love example was just purely you have to be open to the good stuff and the bad stuff. It's you can't have it one way or the other. It's either both. It's that simple.
Oh man, that's cool.
It's just, and that's with most things in life. You know, you're going to have to be prepared to win big or to lose big. I haven't seen it another way of doing it.
You have to be prepared to lose big in order to connect big with love, right?
Yeah.
I really
yourself.
I fully support that concept of absolutely putting yourself out there, which people are so unwilling to do with love, because when you put yourself out there and it all turns to shit, you've totally lost, maybe absolute loss of face in terms of embarrassment, or absolute loss of you lose your heart to the devastation of rejection.
Yes.
And so in fear of doing so, you don't put all your heart out there, all your feelings. You don't live in an ebullient, exuberant state of loving someone fully, because to do so, if you're rejected, means complete rejection of embarrassment. I say, be willing to be a big loser. Be willing to be embarrassed. Be willing to go out there and look like a complete dick and be comfortable with that. Like actors, be willing to accept rejection of jobs you didn't get, so that when you hit love big, you hit it real big, and you have the full enjoyment of it. I mean, what's so wrong with putting yourself out there? What sort of conservative life and existence are you limiting yourself to by not fully experiencing the commitment of love? If you're willing to absolutely go there in the full knowledge you could absolutely lose, and you accept that loss is okay, you're going to win every time, because you're going to have that full experience. And I think some people go in so tiptoe into things out of fear, and that's not necessarily the right way to do it. Equally though, if one person's tiptoeing in and the other one's running in like a bull at a gate, the person tiptoeing in is going to pull away scared. You've obviously got to manage and read the signs of the other partner.
Yeah, I mean,
but if it's you that's tiptoeing, let go a bit. Anyway, Rob, this is your show.
It's not my show. I was just listening to all that and thinking...
Here's my horrendous attempt at interviewing you.
No, I was just thinking, when we're ready, and I really want to do this, is do a podcast on relationships.
Oh, really?
Because it's such a fascinating...
The Lovecast.
Yeah, I'm actually reading a book at the moment. Shout out to Paul McKenna.
Oh, Paul McKenna.
Yeah, he's been around...
Wasn't he a magician?
Years. Hypnotherapist.
Oh, that's right.
But he's written so many self-help books on confidence, weight loss, smoking. But I've always vibed with him. And back in 2006, there was a book called Change Your Life in 7 Days. And it had this CD which you would listen, and it was like a trance that he put you into, and hypnotherapy and NLP and all that sort of cool stuff.
Cool.
But it was really good because it starts shifting your whole energy and your mind space and all that. Anyway, he's recently written a book called 7 Things That Make or Break a Relationship. So not just to do with intimate relationships, but any kind of relationships. But I'm just reading that book now, and it's he in his own words, he's struggled with that aspect, and I think we all do, because it's such a difficult and complex thing, human relationships on any level. And so that's the book I'm reading at the moment, and I think we definitely need to do a podcast on that and try and shed some light.
We need Paul on the show. But maybe we should. Yeah, I'll read that. I tell you what. Why don't you and I read that What the Fact book, and then get Karen on the show, and then we'll read the Paul McKenna one. And if we can't get him on the show, at least we can talk about it.
Yeah, I know. Because relationships have always fascinated me. I think it's just human nature.
Yeah.
And Yeah, but we'll leave that for another time, shall we?
Yeah, that sounds good.
But speaking of human relationships, I've thrown in the word envy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because
Yeah,
it's routine.
it's part of
what
our
is it?
topic.
Routine, rituals, and envy. Yeah.
Yeah, so an envy basically, this is the definition of envy, a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possession, qualities, or luck. Oh, don't you just hate the people that always just seem to be lucky?
Well, especially if it's undeserved.
Oh, undeserved.
Well, I think what a lot of people do is we...
Handed to you on a silver platter.
Yeah, if we just go, oh, you lucky bugger. It's like you miss seeing where they've worked for it. Or you may not appreciate that they've worked for it. Or you could be right and they didn't work for it. But often I see people go, oh, they're so rich, the lucky bugger. Well, they might have worked at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we don't know the full story, what they've sacrificed, how they got there. But yeah, envy is such an interesting one. Jealousy. I mean, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When I say the word envy, can you give me a time or a place or something that you feel envious? Can you think of an example where you feel envy?
Can I share a story of someone else's envy?
Yeah, or someone else's story.
I probably have lots of envious things in my life. No, I do. I could probably, I don't know specifics, but generally I can tell you there have been actors who have done really well, and I've wished that I had done really well in their scenario, or I'd been jealous that someone I know was doing a show and I wasn't asked to be part of it, or something like that. And you feel a bit stink. Oh, they've just made a show and I've known them for years and I didn't get to be in it. And you have to. It's a real growth experience.
Yeah.
Like at least if you come out of it positively, it is. If you come out of it negatively, it isn't. But out of it positively, if you have to go, well, I have to accept as a professional, I may not always be appropriate, or for whatever reason they didn't want to choose me or hadn't even considered me. And my sadness based around this event is my choice. And ultimately you say to yourself, you're far better off not getting caught up in that kind of thing, because a happier Stephen is a Stephen that more people remember and want to employ for acting jobs anyway, because people are attracted to the vibe that makes them feel good. And if I put myself in a negative state, I'm just going to further reinforce lack of employment, because in the acting scenario, no one wants to work with the depressed asshole. Right, but I'll give you a
It
really
depends. Maybe the character calls for
maybe
depressed asshole.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe it's a typecast role where you need to play a depressed person.
Yeah.
I like a good sauna. And, now everyone knows. And when I go to the gym, I consider it a treat to sit in either the spa pool or the sauna or the steam room afterwards. I find the whole theory behind heat shock proteins and the benefit to them fascinating, and I feel better. And when I'm in my home out of Auckland, because I now have an out of Auckland home, and Rob and I catch up here at the cafe, it helps because I don't have a studio here anymore. But when I'm in that out of Auckland location, there aren't as easily access to saunas and things. And I've found it to be true that they make me feel better.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was in town at the Les Mills sauna where Marwin is. What is it? Britomart.
Britomart.
And this guy was in there and he was talking away, and he was a real show-off sort of a personality. He was talking about how he was he had been a New Zealand citizen, but for tax purposes, he's a resident of the Bahamas because that's where he keeps his millions. And he's saying what he didn't like about New Zealand to all and sundry that would listen in the sauna. And I just sat and listened. I like a good conversation in the sauna.
I know you do.
I really enjoyed just listening to his ego go for it, because his ego was on fine form. Well, anyway, I decided to ask him. He said, well, I wouldn't live in Manhattan and New York these days. It's just, not what it used to be. And you couldn't live there for less than $300,000 a year. And I tell you what, I wouldn't live there if you paid me. And I just piped up, what if I paid you $300,000? But he quickly responds, yes, no, I'd live there for that. and then because he was so kind of up there in the world and echelon of wealthy people, and he seemed to talk about all these wealthy people that he'd met in his life, I said, hey, so tell me,
does he know Jeffrey Epstein?
That's what I asked him, bro. That's what I fucking asked him. I said, tell me, Did you know
Palm Beach, is it? Florida? Close to the Bahamas.
You won't believe it. That's what he said. I said, did you know Jeffrey Epstein? And he goes, well, there was this one time I was out in Palm Beach, Florida, and I was at the mall. And he goes, I see this guy.
I don't think he's a mall guy.
I see this guy, and it's Jeffrey Epstein, and he's surrounded by 5 young women, and he's walking towards me, and I clicked, that's Jeffrey Epstein. And I just thought to myself, you lucky bugger. So there's your envy. So this wealthy guy recognizes Jeffrey Epstein, and he goes, yep, I thought, you lucky bugger. I guess that's what you get when you're a billionaire.
See, envy is just, there's no limit to it. You can still be, if he is successful and rich and has that lifestyle, there's always someone more rich, more successful, and far out. What a cool story.
You wouldn't think lucky bugger now, given what we've all found out about him. But there's one little bit more to the story. He said, but then as Jeffrey Epstein walked past me, he looked me up and down and went, hello. And he said to me, this is the man's ego talking, it was so good. He knew I was rich too because he could tell by my linens.
By his what?
His linens, because he was wearing certain type of high quality, high thread count linen pants.
Yes. Well, that's one way.
And he said, the thing is, of course, when one wealthy person sees another wealthy person, you might not know that the quality of my linens are particularly expensive, but he knew.
Of course.
And he acknowledged me.
Yes.
We're of the same club.
The same circles, the same status. I know, and isn't... Yeah, there's so many status symbols or way of showing. I mean, there are some really rich people you would have no idea, but clothing is one of those things where you can make a statement. I think obviously...
Well, I thought to myself, after listening to his ego just go on and on and on, I thought, I hope if I ever become billionaire status that you could never tell. I hope that I could be a man of the people because I value connection with real people. And just the way he spoke, isolated people to be less connected to him, push people away,
Man, you brought up so many things there. Because envy is almost like you're jealous of a person's success, but it's reflective of what you define as success. So as an actor, you're always going to be envious of someone who's more successful. So that's going to trigger you. Well, but if you're not an actor, there could be something else.
Yes and no. I'm less envious of Brad Pitt than I am of someone who was more at a level and circle that I swum in, who then progressed. Because then you go, because Brad Pitt's a million miles away in a different echelon.
No, it's not. I've got him on.
We'll put him on. Let's have him on the show. But you know what I mean. He's at such arm's length from us all.
Of course,
it's not someone I know, but someone I know who does really well. It's easier to be envious of them, and you go, gosh, I could have gotten that. I mean, why didn't I get that audition? Because we have, similar experiences and opportunities.
Yeah, I know. We all do it. I mean, I've been guilty as everyone else of feeling envious and feeling that emotion. And then I kind of want to uncover it and go, well, where's that coming from? What is that? If I flip it around, what's that saying? What's that a reflection of? And what it's saying to me is that I'm not good enough, that maybe I don't deserve that success. And I go, well, why don't I deserve that success? And why is that person any more deserving or less deserving?
Yeah.
And, is that a limiting self-belief? Maybe. Is it just something that is inherent with every human being that we're always comparing? And I made a note in my notes that I think we're living in a society where comparison is just amplified because of social media. Because before that, we could only know what our social circle was up to, our close friends, our neighbours, etc., the people we came in contact with. But now
within Dunbar's number of a maximum sort of experience of 150 people that you could interact with.
Yeah, your co-worker might have scored a really hot wife, and then you're envious. But now you can look on any social media platform, particularly Instagram, and it's just a curated, edited, amazing snapshot of my life and how successful I am.
Yeah.
And it just gives such a false view on reality.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I sort of brought up the envious situation as it is now in modern society. And I think, it can be real dangerous to compare yourself because you don't know, like, the Jeffrey Epstein case. If you admired or idolized someone like that,
To the point where you say, lucky bugger.
I mean, sure,
You don't know what's ahead of him.
Yeah.
You don't know that he's about to get suicided in a few years.
you don't know all the problems and all the challenges and all the
The cost of fuel going out to Fuck Island, it must be expensive.
it's Cesspool Island, according to Trump.
Yeah.
And apparently, there's an interview, just as a side.
Yeah. I hope Jelaine doesn't get killed.
During the
I really
80s or
do.
90s. I'm getting the decades mixed up. But anyway, Trump has had this resort, or I can't even remember the name, but when he's a real estate mogul, and Epstein would show up to this party, and then they're all good mates and stuff, and it's beautiful. I think the jealous...
They both probably wore similar linens.
They were looking very young.
Yeah.
And anyway, and looking very smug, but they're dancing with the Dallas cheerleaders, of course.
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, I think. But anyway, flash forward to present day, and now Trump completely denies sort of even knowing him, or I actually don't know much about him. We never really hung out. So it's kind of...
Sure, yeah.
So, which one is it? But
And I can't judge, actually, because it's hard to know. It's hard from our perspective. No defense, by the way, of Trump, but it's hard to know whether someone who just turns up to parties because you know them as a friend of a friend, or you hang out in similar wealth circles, whether you really connect with them as a friend, or whether you just allow them to be around because that's what you do when you're super wealthy and they allow you to be around. But now the implication is, well, now you're great friends and you're an evildoer as well.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard. It's too easy of a bow to draw. You go, really? That's a bit simplistic.
You got to realise what was the connection. What was the real connection? Was it simply because...
Oh, hang on. Jeff's got a couple of words. Talk to us, Jeff.
Just see if you'd like another coffee.
I'd love another coffee, please. Actually, I'd go green tea if it's right.
Tea, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm all good, Jeff. Yeah, I've had my limit of caffeine for today. Thank you.
Thank you, mate.
I have a fair idea how social circles work, but it's all about connections and who you're in with and who you know. So you could just be turning up to these events purely because you're wanting to further your social network, because that's where you feel like you belong. Success attracts success.
Yeah.
But you may not have. You may actually know nothing about the person. You may know nothing.
Yeah.
Other than you've had a few drinks and partied, and it's very superfluous and superficial. And
that's like saying you
it's
went to
transactional. You may want something from them and go, "Hey, I hear you're into real estate. Maybe we can do business kind of thing."
Yeah, as a networker.
Yeah. So it's not.
Well, there was
There's
an
different
actor.
levels of connection.
There was an actor who went through a court process and was charged for abusing people in a class situation.
Ah, yeah, I know who you mean.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But years ago, when that actor was doing the rounds on New Zealand's most popular soap opera and going to parties of all kinds, it's like saying because you turned up to one of those parties as well, because you're an actor who was networking or whatever, that you're equally as guilty as that guy for having abused people.
Yeah.
And so I can see why in the Trump-Epstein scenario,
Guilty by association.
guilty by association is just such shitty reasoning. I
course it is.
demand more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way that you're just guilty by association. I think it's a different story if there's evidence that and there's actual evidence and detailed information that can tie you that you were in the same location doing the same thing with this person under all those things.
Unlike Clinton, who flew on Lolita Express so many times, it might be a bit more of a closer association.
I guess there's that whole where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
Man, but it's such a... I mean...
Or as they say nowadays, where there's Ghislaine Maxwell, there's broken security cameras.
Of course, yeah.
Let's see how she survives. Yeah.
I know. It's going to be interesting to
Hope
see
she does.
what evidence comes public from
Frankly,
that.
if she doesn't survive, it's more evidence of a nefarious deep state wanting to get rid of her.
Well, they're already predicting
Thank you,
it.
Jeff.
They're already saying that the odds are. I'm sure there are odds on it.
Yeah, maybe go to the TAB and predict how many months up to her court case she'll be suicided.
Yeah.
As they say, give the impression she's committed suicide, but in fact she has been death through some other means.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just it's fascinating because I think as human beings we're fascinated by people that do stuff like that. But on another level, we talk about this in acting, we're somehow drawn and excited about characters that are kind of doing things that you can't do. Because these rich people seem to get away with everything and think, wow.
Yeah.
And they're in this own little world and in their gated communities and they're connected and they can use all their power. And you go, I mean, I think it's human nature to kind of go, you know what? If I had that kind of power, what would I do? What sort of,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we can judge it and we can condemn it and we go, well, you know, they're just doing what they're doing for whatever reason because it gives them power, or it gives them a sense of whatever. And then, like, you know, what would you do? Well, where's your moral compass? Because they may think, well, hang on a minute, I'm not doing anything really wrong. I'm paying for this, or I'm serving. You kind of get what I mean? Like,
yeah, the
on some
paying
level?
for this one's an interesting example. Do you mean like paying for prostitution
Yeah,
legal
yeah,
or something?
yeah.
Because
On
in this country
somehow-
it is legal.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, do you know what you're doing is completely wrong and you just keep doing it because you can,
Yeah.
and you just keep covering it up and buying your way? But then you're kind of mixing and mingling with people that are kind of offering that to you as well. So if you want to get into, say, drugs and make money through that, you know, there's
Like
always
drugs
going to
as
be
an example.
Yeah, there's always
yeah.
going to be someone that's going to profit from that, and
Yeah.
they're going to go, yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things. Is it just on a psychological point of view? Like, I think we all would do something if we benefited in some way, and we feel like we can get away with it, and it's like, yeah, got away with that.
Yeah, and I think that's where so this ties back to envy, where you might see a shortcut for something that ticks a box for you to
Yeah.
feel good, right?
Yeah.
So for some people, the idea of you being a successful person yourself makes you feel so good to meet your needs as a valuable, complete person, that by not being successful, you also equate it with terrible depression and lack of worth. So this is where if you can accelerate to a place of feeling good by cheating, people will.
Yeah.
Whether it's steroids in a
Absolutely.
competition,
Yeah.
or whether it's drugs to feel good, to accelerate yourself to that place
Yeah.
that you can't find naturally. Whatever it is, or power over someone in a nefarious way because you have no natural power over people as a normal human being. Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Envy can drive unscrupulous methods of approach.
Yeah, yeah. Because envy is one of the sins, 7 deadly sins, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, I forgot. That's
Yeah.
right.
But I suppose envy can be utilised in a powerful aspect if you use that as a fuel to kind of better yourself. But then you've got to ask yourself, as long as you're not hurting someone, and you know, there's always repercussions. So I'm a big believer in that. Whatever you do, there's going to be some sort of reaction to it on some level. So there's a price to pay for everything. So if you take those shortcuts or do the wrong things to further your career, somewhere along the line, something's going to happen.
Well,
You'll be found out. You'll
if
be
people
caught.
find out, they don't value you. Which in the scenario I'm painting, which is about self-worth and value. That's the greatest thing you'd be afraid of. Yeah. The irony that to do something that is done because of a lack of self-worth then leads to a greater risk of erosion of your self-worth is ironic.
Yeah, it is ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should celebrate more on the topic of envy. If you're saying that you're not good enough or you're jealous because maybe you can't get that success, maybe it's about celebrating more about your unique qualities, and that we shouldn't be afraid to express that uniqueness of ourselves. So, if someone's more successful, you've got to ask, well, what does success mean to you? And if you do want their success, well, maybe it's about, expressing your unique talents and abilities your way, because there's no one else like you. And I know that's quite cliche. But
there's no one else like you.
yeah, you're a special person.
But okay, let's accept that. That's true.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I was just sort of thinking about it and going, well, often the thing that is uniquely you, no one else has. So don't try and compare or copy someone else. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So you can't really be like the Brad Pitt
That's really cool.
or whatever
Yeah.
whoever you envy.
Yeah.
Don't try to be like them because, they may be looking at you and thinking the same thing with other areas of their life, going, far out, I wish I was like that guy because he's
Yeah.
got this together or whatever. So we all do it on some level, and I think it's just,
If you can really just relax and be you,
yeah, that's the
with
key.
no envy of others and full acceptance of who you are, to say to yourself that old mantra, you are enough. I am enough. And you probably
that's
have
it.
people looking at you jealously that you have found your own inner peace. And I think that's something to aspire to, not to have people look at you jealously, but to be in a position where people go, wow, I love that you are just happy in your own skin. You don't need to try to be someone else. That in itself is an achievement.
That is something definitely to aspire to, and it's always going to be a kind of work in progress. But that's probably you've summed it up there. If you can just be comfortable in your own skin.
Okay, so seeing as we started off going through Rob's lists of disciplines, and we went Rob's list of routines, I should say, rituals and envy. Can you share anything from envy that you feel you have dealt with, that you struggled with, but you got your head around? Something you don't mind sharing about your own example of envy, because I shared a couple of mine. Well,
Yeah.
one of mine and one of someone else's.
I think, this is kind of encompassing my kind of whole journey. When I was younger, in my teenage years, I sort of reinvented myself because I felt I wasn't good enough. So the actor Jean-Claude Van Damme, for me, kind of triggered this whole thing of, here's a guy that was in the movies, looked good, was Belgium. I had Dutch parents,
Dutch heritage.
Dutch last name, Van Damme. Actually, Jean-Claude Van Varenberg, but it changed it to Van Damme.
Right.
Van Damage.
Is that what it's short for? Van Damage.
Oh, I don't know. That's just what they nickname.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know what it was. A lack of self-worth. I know what it was. I mentioned this before. I was very sick at school, and I was getting these terrible migraines, and so I turned my attention to health.
Right.
And I got into weight training, and then I found this amazing, and I was interested in acting.
Right.
And then I saw this successful guy who just exuded such energy and confidence and had an amazing athletic body, and I thought, and he was a martial artist, and I thought, I want to be like him. It was something to aspire to. It gave
He embodied
me
everything
a
that was
dream.
cool, eh?
Yeah, it did
Yeah.
for me, for like a 14, 15-year-old boy watching Bloodsport and then kickboxer and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was I actually did have a bit of a ritual. I remember I had this poster of kickboxer where he's in this amazing shape, and my ritual was to visualize that, and then to visualize that that's the body that I was going to create.
Right.
But here's the lesson. So in trying to be like him, I was disempowering myself in a way because it was always looking up or idolizing this version of someone else and their success. Whereas what you got to do is go inward and go, well, you can have all that, but do it your way. So you have the blueprint within you. So it took many, many years to kind of stop looking outside myself for that success or version of success. To say, well, actually, you have all that within you. You have the ability to be just as successful if that's what you want.
Right.
If you want to be famous, then go for it. But I'll tell you what, that's not what you're really looking for. You're just looking for your own self-worth and to self-love and to be comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And that takes years and years of experience of getting to know myself and then just going and relaxing, going, I don't need to. Because, in my 20s, I was doing crazy shit, taking my shirt off and but it's just, I call it like a rite of passage of just growing up and going through the processes where you go.
Yeah, but you're talking, okay, no, hang on. A lot of guys have done that, taken their shirt off when they've reached a position of, they've they've chiseled their body to go look at me.
Yeah.
A lot of guys do this, and it's a dance festival, taking off my
All of
shirt.
it, yeah.
And I'm at the beach, of course I'm going to take my shirt off, whatever, because you're proud of what you've achieved.
You're proud, but you also want to show off.
But also your ego says, look at me.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you want to create this exterior image that is strong to show the world that, hey, I'm a success. But the problem is there's a disconnect. Deep down, you're still this skinny kid, scared and vulnerable and going, holy shit, I'm just sort of playing. It was like a role. It was really just a role that I created. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that in showing outwardly that you're doing that, you're also, when you're a thinking person, can read that as deep down your need to do so expresses that inwardly you are not that person. Because the person who's truly comfortable in themselves entirely through and through, they might take their shirt off, but there's no need to. They might do it because it's an appropriate environment, but there's no need to show because they have said to themselves, I am enough. I don't need to do this to show that I'm enough. I just am enough.
Yeah.
So
well,
why
that
would I need
takes
to do it?
tremendous knowing thyself and being comfortable.
Does.
But it's like
hey man, compliments to you. I think that's more where you're at now in life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not like you go taking your shirt
Look,
off
I celebrate that
all the time.
That 20 to 30-year-old guy that was doing that because I wouldn't be in the position I am now.
Sure.
I have no regrets with that. It was totally in keeping with my life journey and story. But getting back to your Bahama sauna guy, he
Mr.
was
Wealthy.
outwardly expressing his egos. He need to. Why would you need to be in a sauna telling all this stuff? Like, what's that serving
It
you?
was so obvious that he needed recognition.
Yeah, like I need
so
that
obvious.
approval
Yeah,
and
it's so obvious that
gratification.
he was empty to me.
Yeah, and I know that, I'm sure there are, correct me if I know this, that there are women that do this as well, that feel that they're not good enough, and then they've got to project all this beauty and wear all the makeup and wear the right clothes and do all that in order to feel worthy.
Yeah.
And we're deep down, they just want to be, they know, because they're just lacking some sort of self-worth or self-love, and they're looking for it always from an external gratification point of view. And I think we all do that in some way, on some level, through, hey, I've got an amazing job, or I've got a PhD, but it comes down to the individual. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I know that if you play that game, then you're kind of looking for recognition outside yourself.
Yes.
And then you get into that trap where if you get extreme fame or success and it doesn't fill that void, you start turning to all the distractions and dysfunction, and then it just makes it worse because you're not addressing that deep rooted cause of why you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
It's like you're just, wow.
Man, that's some deep shit.
Yeah, we've taken you to some places, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of winds things up for the day. We've got a few things to prepare until our next episode. Hopefully we can get those guests on in the future.
Yeah.
It's looking promising, and like I don't mind saying either way, whatever the outcome is there, that Karen Zinn's book, What the Fat and What the Fast, and I think the new one they're working on, which is What the Face, because they've gone for discussing all the expertise on fat and good fats now, and changing that whole thing up. And that book's all about how the low-fat diet of the standard American diet that was recommended over the last 30 years, how wrong it was, how total bullshit it is, and the programming that's gone into, how people still look for something and still buy something that says 99.9% fat-free. In fact, it's probably really bad for you because it just means high carb.
Yeah, there was that whole thing of the less fat thing. It's just healthy.
It's just healthy.
Get rid of all the fat.
Which was absolutely flawed. And then there's the fasting thing that was a phase, or it's sort of fashionable. But she then co-wrote another book called What the Fast, for fasting, and its benefits. So that's interesting. And then because skin's a real thing for your outward appearance, where skin actually represents your like, for example, acne or other skin issues, could be eczema and stuff, represents as the largest organ on your body what's going on internally, because as a dietitian they're approaching skin from a diet perspective.
Right.
So I'm excited to say we're courting Karen to come on the show. And whether she does or doesn't, I would highly recommend people check out those books as just something to think of for future shows. And we've got some other people lined up, which I'm excited about, but I won't spoil the surprise on that at the moment.
Sounds good. I'm really looking forward to hopefully chatting to Karen, because she's all about the healthy fats and low carb. Is that right?
I think she's all about whatever works for you, which was even cooler. It was even because she's talked about how other people have, say for example, said the keto diet has been bad because really the evidence shows that keto was designed for people with, I forget which disease. There was a disease at which if you could have lowered carbohydrates, it dramatically improved something with seizures. I've forgotten what that, epilepsy perhaps, or possibly something with Parkinson's. It was a neurological related condition which that diet helped with. But then people got onto it because of the effect on weight loss. And there was a time when dietitians would say, look, I don't support this because the science doesn't support it. She's so open-minded. She said, if it works for you, it works for you. But let's discuss the pros and cons. And I really dig that.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much information surrounding diet, nutrition, so many diets that have come and gone. But I'm really curious about learning more and for my own well-being, the whole digestive system and how that relates to your overall health.
Well, her
processing of food and that whole,
her take
on
on it
fascinating.
Was for the purpose of your mental well-being. So this is great.
Yeah, because I have a dear friend who has struggled with a variety of intestinal and digestive issues, autoimmune diseases, anxiety, so many things, and it was all diet related. And it's just fascinating how that impacts, as you say, your well-being and your mental.
Yeah.
I mean, she said something like, what was it? Oh, it was coconut. Anything to do with coconut, after eating it, she would just start to fall asleep. I'm going, what?
Well, it's like a coconut sedative.
Yeah, it's like crazy. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, right.
So it has that, certain foods have certain effects.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can one person eat this and feel fine and another person have that effect? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, indeed. And shout out to our friend Richard in London. I hope you're doing all right out there, Richie. I understand you're still going through it with mask wearing and all that jazz. So keep safe, my friend.
And just shout out to Janine from What? Is it yeah?
There's 3 years, an hour, and a what?
Oh, no, I forgot the what? Shout out to Janine, who's doing it tough in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, who I think they're in their second week of level 3, who we had on last week. And I got an email.
I hope she's not tearing her hair out yet.
Oh, it's tough, man. I mean, you got to think about that. Like, you
know how you were into Wim Hof for a while?
Oh, yes, but not from the books.
He's not from the books because he's got a lot of learnings. He's learnt a lot of things. But his great saying is, breathe, motherfucker.
Yeah,
that's right. I was reading about some breathing stuff recently, and I started doing, because you know how I was sick for a couple of weeks, and I was coughing a lot. I'm amazed how I've been able to get through this podcast without coughing now, because I'm past the sickness, but it sort of lingers in your lungs. I've come to the conclusion that the breathing exercises I did, which were Wim Hof style, really progressed me through that faster after I was finished being sick. So you can finish being sick, but you can have a lingering desire to cough for months after a lung infection.
Yeah.
And I've come to the conclusion that this technique is what's helped me the most. You do the following technique 30 times, and it goes like this. You do a fast in-breath, like to the fullest capacity of your lungs, and then you hold that breath for 15 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 15 seconds, and then you release the breath and do it again.
How long?
For 30, you do that 30 times.
No, how long for the exhalation part?
As long as you like.
Okay.
You don't have to time that exhalation.
Quick inhalation through the nose?
I think it's better, but as Wim would say, doesn't matter, just breathe, motherfucker. So if you can't breathe through the nose because of whatever issues, breathe through. But it is better through the nose if you can, generally for all breathing in and out. And then hold it for 15 seconds and let it go. No.
Easy,
And
easy
then
to
repeat
do.
it again 30 times.
Yeah, and I do a similar
Well, anyway,
breath exercise.
I did that, and my lungs have really helped. It's really cleared up. And I've only done the exercise a few times. But what's your?
I was just going to say, for my meditation, I do a count of, say, 7 to 8 with inhalation, hold for 5, and then same 7 to 8 exhalation, and do that like 10 times before I go into meditation. It works amazingly. Something about holding the breath, and obviously the slow inhalation, slow out, it just brings everything down, has some amazing physiological benefit. And just before we wrap up, what is do you know the physiological reasons as to what's going on there? Or do we need to read the books?
Yeah. I can't help but wonder if it has something to do with the scientifically stated Bohr effect, which has to do with the way that the hemoglobin in the blood holds oxygen more efficiently
Oxygenated blood.
by building more carbon dioxide levels within the blood.
Right, because I know there's obviously got to be a physiological
Yeah.
effect, and
We can talk more about that next time. Well, maybe we should get a breathing specialist on for that.
Yeah, but we don't with no masks.
With no mask. Well, I don't know about you, Rob, but let's finish the show by starting a breathing technique. So you ready? Breathe in. Hold for 15.